What's up, guys? The Lazy Goldmaker. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the war within. It's coming on the horizon. We don't know much. Well, what we do know about professions is that they want to keep the current profession system with knowledge, with work orders. That's what we know. When do we know this, you might ask? Well, it was mentioned in a couple of the group interviews they did just after BlitzCon and some of the interviews. So here they did this, was mentioned in the Mr. GM interview. Current plan is for the war within to have its own version of the existing profession talent system. There will be work orders, learn talents back into specialized things. Work order system is confirmed to carry forward, though they've heard a lot of player feedback and they're looking for ways to make them better. Archaeology, yeah, whatever. So those two are the points that are important, right? We're going to look at crafting orders again. We're going to look at professional knowledge again. So I thought I'd talk about, well, now is the time. Alpha isn't out. I'm going to give my feedback, sort of a wish list, think ahead, what would I want? How do I think they could improve this? Obviously, some of this is going to be extremely biased to my own preferences and tendencies, but that's fine. All these videos are by their very nature. Now, the first thing is the profession stats. I think inspiration in particular is really problematic. And it's really just exacerbated by these inspiration nodes that just turns into, if you rushed this, it was extremely profitable. Now it's just like a huge cost to pay to be competitive in a large number of markets. That being said, inspiration, particularly if you're talking about things you sell on the auction house, I don't mind it so much for gear. But for stuff you sell on the auction house, like gems, like enchants, that kind of stuff, it's really creates a weird thing, particularly for items where you can't never guarantee maximum quality. Because then you're just crafting, you're maybe getting 30, 40% if you're pushing it, 50% quality 3, and that's all your value. That's all of the money you make. And then the rest, you just want to sell them, get rid of the quality 2s. So the good thing about this for the game, for the overall game, is of course it means that for a lot of items the auction house is flooded with quality 2 items. So they're very cheap, right? So that means you can get a relatively good enchant pretty cheap. Like the difference between Sophic Devotion quality 2 and quality 3, not that large, but of course if you get everything at the best possible level, then that's gonna matter. And then you have it's even worse for like the ring enchants where the quality 2 ones are selling for vendor value essentially. Here you have the absolute extreme variant of this where just the quality 2 items is dirt cheap. So this is very good for casuals, right? And sort of, let's face it, it's very good for casuals in general to make professions hard to make gold with, make loads of gold with. But I think this is maybe a little bit too extreme because right now if you don't have craft sim, it's literally completely impossible for you to even figure out if crafting anything is profitable. If I wanted to craft Files of Glacial Fury with just the base UI, this wouldn't be here, this wouldn't be here. I would just be looking at this and be like, okay, how much is this? Okay, what does this mean? What qualities am I getting? It's impossible. Like, this profession system needs add-ons badly to play. But yeah, I think inspiration, particularly like once you stack it, the fact that you need to stack it for a lot of builds, or needed to early on, for crafting, for selling on the auction house, I didn't like it much at all. I think that it's fine for crafted gear. I don't mind like doing multiple crafting orders to get max quality gear. I think it works quite well there. It's not really a problem. I also think that in general, it would just be better if we all had the same inspiration chance. And there were other ways to distinguish crafters. But I don't know. I mean, it might be that then what's the point of having profession stats at all? I don't know. If you remove inspiration, maybe now resourcefulness and multicraft is everything that matters, and having like 0.5% less multicraft is going to screw you over. In terms of gold making potential on the region-wide auction house, who knows? The hidden skill value, I think maybe that could fill the role or maybe just rework and combine hidden skill value and inspiration. So inspiration just scales with your skill in a specific knowledge, a specific recipe. So as you just unlock more points into that recipe, then you get a slightly higher chance of proccing the max rank or something like that, and then eventually you reach a cap. It's not that hard to reach. I don't know. Now it's sounding like it's just the same. So I'm kind of conflicted about inspiration, but yeah, it's extremely powerful in general as a stat for professions. So another thing. This is probably the biggest feedback. Most important one. Blizzard, we need some form of catch-up for profession knowledge. Something more than just like farming dragon shards of knowledge at an extremely slow rate. So we did get a little bit of extra knowledge with every patch, but overall, if you're coming into the game late and trying to get your profession up to speed, you're going to spend literal years, you're going to spend months to even be slightly competitive. So I think that one way they could do it is to decrease the number of talent points needed. That could help out, particularly decrease the number of talent points needed for one specific max recipe. So right now, obviously, if you want to max out like swords or maces and hammers or whatever, you need these. You need to max out all 3 of these nodes, and you also need to max out these 2 nodes. So I think that having this like generic skill tree part of the 3, I think I should just leave that. Throw that away completely, and just have like recipe specific types. So have like maybe 1 base node and then 1 node per armor type or weapon type or whatever, something like that. And then there's like a way to unlock the recipe that's tied to, maybe that can be tied to other aspects of the game. We had some reputation recipes, maybe more of that should be tied to reputations. Now that they're warbands, it's easy to get stuff on your ults anyway. That's something I've been thinking about, just like removing the generic one, because this one just increases the tax of being late by a very significant margin. So it would be very good to remove this, just to have like reduce the number of points necessary to max out one recipe at least. So that if you're late, maybe you don't necessarily need catch up, because just with like the one-time sources, you'll be able to max out one recipe. Or one recipe type with the one-time sources available if you start late. I think that would be a pretty good point. So like you can actually get into profitably crafting something right away. Whereas now if you go into like gem crafting or whatever, it's talking 120, 150 points to get started off of one-time sources that are easily available. You're going to get like half of that at most. I don't know the math, but it's a really bad hole to dig yourself out of. So I think that relieving that would be really good. Then you have this crafting order system. And man, there's some stuff they need to do here. So I think the number one is to just, we'll look at, I don't know if there's, we'll see what orders are up, but public orders, I think they've been overall like a pretty bad failure for Blizzard. I do have to say that. I do not think they have been good at all. And that's kind of sad, but that is the way it is. Most of them are essentially just scams, as we can see here. No materials included. Primal Convergent. Materials here cost you 700 gold. So yeah. These are scams. The only reason someone would do this if they're very, very desperate to do their profession weekly complete work orders quests. So yeah, I think that the removal of requiring you to have all of the reagents for public orders, I think that's really bad. I think also the game shipped with no items that actually made sense to send public orders for, because everything had quality, and when everything has quality, you want a top quality item. But when you're sending a public order, you can't really guarantee top quality items, because for most items, you can't guarantee max quality. You can only guarantee the second best quality. Then you have no way of knowing how good their inspiration rate is, or what their multicraft is, or whatever. So I think just make you add all the materials, and maybe have public orders just focused on stuff with no quality, which they've already started doing. The crests needed to upgrade items in the final 2 patches. They have been sort of the perfect work order type item. Guaranteed the same. There's no multi-craft, there's no inspiration. They can craft it or they can't. Just make people add all the materials so you don't have like painful of crest orders that no one's gonna fill because they didn't include the Dracothist and they included a tip of like 500 or whatever. So I think that just force them to include materials, or maybe find some way of telling them like, hey, based on prices on the auction house, this is a reasonable fee if you don't want to include materials. Just have something to help people so it's not just all scams. I think that would be really good. And obviously we can also add some more incentives to put up public orders, whether that's through quests to put up orders, or maybe more items like crests where you need a specific bind on pickup item. You need to refine some form of currency or stuff you get from the world. So like you need to refine that through a crafting order to utilize it for its intended purpose, so that you're forced to sort of interact more often with the order system, and so that it actually functions as like an exchange that people use. Because right now, there's no real reason to go check public orders outside of like if you have an enchanter, it's worth it right now, but it's pretty bad overall. So yeah, those are some early thoughts on the crafting system. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not a huge fan of the Dragonflight crafting system in general. I think that it creates a really like unfun meta of unlocking stuff. But it is what it is. You need to just farm knowledge every week forever to be competitive. I burned myself out on that very heavily for the first patch by doing it on too many different characters. And it really, some of it is also tied to the auction house, of course, but it really rewards the absolute top end of players in terms of hours spent, and makes it really, really hard for people who aren't on that level or who come into it late, which hopefully they can change, and hopefully they take some of this to mind, or at least just make it a little bit easier to jump into late, and maybe tie some unlocks to more interesting out of the profession knowledge like system. The talent trees are overall just like, instead of being cool things you spec into, I feel like they're things you absolutely need to have to be able to craft anything for any meaningful purpose, at least if you're thinking about this from like a gold making perspective. So that's it. If you disagree with me, agree with me, got anything I missed, let me know in the comments, and we'll see you in the next video.